Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to be here for the final round of presentations. So let's go straight to Ethiopia. We are very lucky to have Ellen Angelidis coming from Detroit with her fantastic publishing company, Open Heart, Big Dreams, a published book for children, a very strong topic on Ethiopian food culture, but not only. So we are very lucky because Ethiopia was not present at the awards for years, and through Open Heart, Big Dreams, we have an amazing and very old culture with us. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Is this on? Okay, it's actually Eleanor, but that's okay. My mother will forgive you. And let me know if there we go. Well, I'm honored to be here, and you'll find out in a moment how I come to represent Ethiopia. I'm actually of Dutch origin, you may guess by the first name, and I married a Greek, which you may guess by the last name, and then it gets more interesting. So this is a little about me, and I won't bore you with all the details, but I'm a lawyer by training. I was an Amazon executive for more than a decade, including some roles here in Europe. And this last chapter, or this current chapter, is as a accidental social entrepreneur and children's book publisher. And that's my beautiful family that my daughter liked to refer to when she was little as a chocolate rainbow. Ethiopia is huge and diverse. 130 million people live there. They speak 70 to 90 languages, and no, not dialects, languages. And about half the population has never had the chance to learn to read. Some have never even held a book in their hand. My connection to Ethiopia is our youngest daughter, and when she heard some of these facts, she was not having it. She just simply said, that's not fair. So we set out to do something about it, including building a library in her birth town of Bahadar, which if you look on a map of the world is close to the third largest lake on the continent of Africa, Lake Tana. But the problem was the library didn't have the right books. In fact, it didn't have very many local language books at all. So we knew we needed to create them. And I won't go into detail, but if you don't have money and you know lots of creative people, you come up with a creative process, and our books are created mostly with volunteers, very talented volunteers, including children's books authors, translators, illustrators, artists, and we start anywhere in this process and work to where we need to go to get a quality children's book. Now I want to give you a little taste of Ethiopia, so I'm going to see if I can get this to play. Or they can get it to play. That is my beautiful daughter at age 11. Whoops. Can you get the video to play? I'm not sure how to make it play from here. We tested it, so I know it works. Let me see if this works. I'm pressing whatever button I have on here, and obviously it's not working. All right, I'm going to give this a second for the guys upstairs. Can you get a video to play, or is that not possible? Thumbs up, thumbs down? All right, well, we'll keep going, and if we get a chance, we'll play the video, because there's nothing like hearing an 11-year-old's voice, and mine is no good substitute. What we learned is all children love colorful books, especially ones in their first language that feature their culture. We also learned everyone needs to see themselves in books. That's a good friend of ours who helped us launch his family. Actually, he passed. He had an untimely passing. Kids with different abilities. And you can imagine in an under-resourced country, if kids with abilities don't get what they need, you can only imagine what it's like for kids with different abilities. We hoped that creating the books would be enough, because that was sort of where our skills lied. But unfortunately, when you're in an under-resourced place, you normally just work on a project basis. And where in the world do you just get books on a project basis and really solve literacy? So we started printing locally in Addis Ababa, but the same quality was available elsewhere in the world because, as my son would say, if we wouldn't give it to a child in the US or Europe, why would we give it to a child in Ethiopia? And then we needed to get our books to kids all over Ethiopia. It's huge. Remember the 70 to 90 languages. It's not an easy task, but we started from rural areas where kids would read under a tree, other areas where donkeys would bring the books to children, and you can see the joy and the curiosity. Because if you've never seen a book before, imagine what it's like to see it for the first time. And as one little boy said to me, "This is me, this is me." It wasn't, of course, but that's the goal. I won't bore you with all the details, but I'm an Amazon executive. We do track the numbers and really want to have an impact that builds trust. We've created over 180 unique copyrighted titles in 29 languages, including 15 Ethiopian. And we have 20 books featuring kids with different abilities. I won't read this for you either, but those are all the languages. What I will ask for anyone in the room that sees their language up there, if you can find places that can use our books, that helps provide support. And we're expanding languages to any language that would like to have quality children's books featuring stories from the continent of Africa. Because if you look in any library, they're missing not only in Ethiopia, they're missing everywhere. And our next step is spreading reading rooms. So books and kids need a safe space and they need to be engaged. So this is our next big project, reading rooms all over Ethiopia to reach every child in the next 10 years. We've distributed over 600,000 since the end of 2017 across every region in 12 languages. And while that generally, if you know how challenging Ethiopia can be, gets us a lot of applause, it's not nearly enough. And we have lots of collaborators. It's not something you can do as a person or even a small group of people. You need a giant global village. Our team and our books are award-winning. And why does that matter? It goes to what I said earlier. Many under-resourced places in the world get less than. They get lower quality. They get smaller. They get black and white. They get things you wouldn't pay for. So what we set out to do is say, if we can create beautiful books that people will pay for, then the people who can buy them can support the people who don't have the funds. When they win awards, that is affirmation that our books are, as Gourmand would like to say, best of the best, or best in the world. So for those of you familiar with the International Board of Books for Young People, our books have won IBI Honor List Awards, and this was the first year Ethiopia and the 5 languages we represented were ever represented on that world stage. So very exciting for the creators, the country, and the project. We were introduced to Gourmand in 2023 when we received a notice that our books had won. I had to look up what this organization was. What were they doing? How did they find our books? It was just a beautiful, wonderful surprise. And those were the 2 books that were honored that year, 5 Senses and Letter from a Plough Nation, which is a letter from Ethiopia to her people. And Ethiopia is a traditional farming country. Last year, 2 more books and more creators, Friends Forever, about how bananas and tomatoes could be friends. So a book you may want to check out, as well as Thank You Cows, which my Dutch relatives found that book particularly fascinating, given the Netherlands' connection with cows and wonderful cheese. This year's Gourmand Awards are special again. The first is the true story of teff, which won the best of the best last night. And teff is called a super grain, and it is used in the staple for Ethiopian bread called injera. And we actually have a wonderful book called The Runaway Injera, which talks about injera being a little mischievous. The second book I wrote with a gentleman to honor his son, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Teff is a very fine grain, and if you look in your grocery store, it's one of those grains that if you're on no-carb diet, it might actually work for you. And it actually is ground using stones like the woman pictured on the back cover of the book. It is grown in some very interesting places in Ethiopia, and that is a young woman harvesting. The art of cooking is to honor this young gentleman who passed away at the age of 12, participating in a TikTok challenge. His family was distraught and wanted to share his stories to avoid that pain for any other family. And when I talked to them, I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help, because they were from my hometown of Denver. And they started telling me about how this little boy loved to cook. He loved to cook when his dad came home. He loved to cook for his family. And it just popped in my head. I said, why don't we do a book about cooking to honor your son? He was a twin, so it was particularly painful for his brother and his whole family when this happened. And Ethiopia has a long tradition of cooking, but they've recently gotten into some interesting international restaurants and chefs. This actually, the picture there is from an Ethiopian chef who does pizza. And some of you may know Marcus Samuelsson, an Ethiopian who grew up in Europe and now has restaurants all over the world, including Ethiopia. And you'll see this book in Ethiopia with my daughter and I and a friend. And it features little boys learning to cook for their parents. And it ends up being a wonderful tribute to this little boy and his family, but also a beautiful gender empowerment book, because Ethiopia is still a place where mostly moms and sisters cook, or aunts. So just showing little boys cooking has an additional benefit. So I want to thank you for listening. I'm around if you have questions. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And if you ever get the chance to learn a little bit more about Ethiopia, I like to remind everyone that if history is to be believed, we are all Ethiopian. Just those in the room, ancestors migrated places with less sun, so less need for melanin, but we are all Ethiopian, so these are all your stories, and I hope you take the time to get to know them. Thank you.